and my name is Untitled and Assistant Professor of Economics. And today, I'm so pleased and delighted to be hosting our brilliant speaker, Chris Stiffler, and who is a Senior Economist at Colorado Fiscal Institute. And that is an independent research institution analyzing fiscal, economic, and fiscal issues for Colorado. Okay, so I hope this time is to your understanding of Ballot and your choice. Okay, so 40 minutes for talk and 20 minutes for Q&A. Okay, so
Yes, this year's ballot. This year's ballot is the longest it's ever been. There's 9 voting things on the bottom of Denver's ballot. There's 14 state ballot initiatives, in addition to like an RTD and some counting things. So our ballots are like 6 pages long, okay? So what I'm gonna do is explain things like ranked choice voting to you, the judicial misconduct, there's one on abortion, there's one on same-sex marriage, there's a couple Tabor-related ones, there's some tax increases. So I'm gonna explain all them. I also wanna kind of situate that in the state budget situation and the Tabor situation. We got $800 checks a couple of years ago because of Tabor. I'm gonna explain them and how they situate with these ballot issues. So I'm super excited to see so many people came to hear me talk for the next 4 hours. All right. First question, do you know where your tax dollars go? Every dollar you get Colorado in sales tax, or if you filed income tax, you know where they go? How many cents of your dollar go to schools, or roads, or higher education, or jails? Any idea? What do you think? What's the biggest chunk of the general fund, the biggest chunk of our state budget? What's it doing? What do you think? Shout it out. What do you think?
ADOT.
Department of Transportation? Way off. The next expert. Who else? Now that I just said way off to him, I don't think I'm going to volunteer. Here's the general fund pie this year. Schools get about 33 cents. I think of it as a dollar. The schools get about 33 cents every dollar we give Colorado. Medicaid, you're talking healthcare for low-income, disabled, elderly populations, that's Medicaid. That's about 30 cents of our dollar. And then you got your higher ed, corrections, and human services that make the bulk of the state budget. Very little transportation money in the state budget. We fund our transportation, our roads from the gas tax. A little different than the general fund state budget. But that's what you're thinking about when you're talking about the general fund. So there's some ballot issues that take away money from the state budget. This is the pie you should see in your head of where you're taking money from. You're really taking money from schools and colleges and Medicaid, human services. Okay, that's the state budget. We also have a thing called Tabor. Well, just a little quick more background about the state budget. It gets more complicated with schools because we fund schools both with local and state dollars. So there's your state and local split. About $5 billion come from the state, and a bunch of your property taxes, which are local to your school district, take in about $4 billion to pay for our schools. Everyone has been complaining about the property taxes going up lately, but it's been a huge boom to schools. If you look at the school pie, 2018, we were only kicking in about $2 billion property tax, and 36% of school funding was from local. Now we're almost 45% local because we're kicking in almost $4 billion 6 years later. So, people are complaining about the property taxes, but it's been great for schools. Okay? It also frees up money. If more local is funded, more of the pie is funded locally, it frees up state dollars for other things like roads or higher education or Medicaid. All right. Another thing I want to explain before we talk about the ballot issues is Tabor. Tabor is a constitutional amendment we added into our state constitution in 1992. It's 2 years before the movie Dumb and Dumber came out. That's how I demarcate time, before and after anti-Dumb and Dumber. So people know Tabor a little bit recently because we got $800 Tabor checks. We were actually mailed $800 checks to everyone in August 2022. And we got large Tabor refunds last year when we filed our income taxes to the tune of about $750. Okay. Other major provisions of Tabor, you can't raise taxes without a vote of the people. So that's why some of the things on the ballot are tax increases. They have to go to the vote to raise taxes on guns and ammo, which that's one of the ballot issues. That's a requirement of Tabor. Our elected officials can't raise taxes like they can in other states. We go to a vote. Okay. Tabor outlaws certain types of taxes. It says we can't have a graduated rate. We have to have a flat income tax rate. It says we can't have local income taxes. So like Aspen can't have their own income tax like New York City does. Okay. Tabor also sets election provisions, tells us when we vote on taxes and the ballot language. And there's these weird quirks of these election provisions, which we'll show you in a second why we're voting on a couple of these things. The RTD one, the sports gambling one. Those are all provisions of Tabor. And then finally, Tabor caps how big government can grow every year. So Tabor says there's this cap. The cap goes by inflation plus population growth. So if prices go up 2%, population goes up 1%, that cap would be allowed to grow by 3%. And then all the state collects and taxes and fees has to stay below the cap. So the bars up there represent all taxes and fees the state collects. And that referendum C cap is that line I'm showing with my hand. You can see we were a ton above there in the last 2 years, 3.7 billion above. That's why we returned so much money in the last 2 years. That's why we got $800 checks mailed to you. The state couldn't keep it and give it to schools or roads. It returned it to us in the form of Tabor rebates. And if you're a taxpayer in Colorado, if you're not a taxpayer, it's a good time to work about a week. If you're a college kid, seriously, file an income tax, and then you'll be access these big Tabor rebates. So back in 2022, we returned almost 2.7 billion of that money through those direct payments. If you're a taxpayer in 2022, you got $800 back from the state in an actual check. They mailed them out in August, right before an election. Really great way to put your name on a check and get votes. That was because of Tabor. Okay? Now we're not nearly as above the cap as much as we thought as we were. And this year, we're only going to be about 365 million above. That turns out to be about $40 a person. So I took my $800 check and bought new skis 2 years ago. Now I'm going to take my $40 and get those skis waxed. All right, so that sets up the stage to understand a little bit more about the moving pieces. Now I want to go through all the ballot issues. Okay? Sometimes you see numbers, sometimes you see letters, sometimes you see propositions, sometimes you see amendments. I want to show you the difference. Okay? Ooh, first, I got to talk about rules. Kind of inserted a wolf slide. You can download the data from the Secretary of State, look at how every county voted on every measure. But you can also look at how many people voted for president on the top of the ballot, but didn't make it all the way down to the bottom. And so what I did is I looked at total votes cast. About 1% didn't even vote for president in 2020. Interesting to me. Remember wolves? We introduced wolves. I don't know if everyone was around in 2020. Statewide vote to release the wolves. Every county mostly said no. And 66 of Boulder said yes, and 67% of Boulder said yes, and 66% of Denver said yes. And we released the wolves by 0.9%. Increased wolves. But look how 5% didn't even vote on wolves. So what I'm emphasizing is we repealed the Gallagher Amendment, which is the property tax cap. But 8% didn't people vote on that one. The bottom of the ballot, people who don't make it all the way down the bottom of the ballot, it impacted the election. So I gave this lecture at a bar 2 days ago, and so I chinked the glass and said, "You clear bottoms up." So I say we say vote bottoms up. Make sure you get to all those ballot issues on the bottom of your ballot. All right, that's wolves. Now, why do you see numbers and letters? Okay. If you see a number, it came from the citizens initiative process. Okay, you know those people who stand outside a Safeway and nag you when you come out of Safeway and you grab your cell phone like you're talking to someone? That's the citizens initiative process. If it has a number, they gathered about 150,000 signatures and they got on the ballot through signature gathering. It has a number, it came through that one. If it has a letter, our legislators got 2/3 of the Capitol and referred it to us. They passed a bill to refer something to us. I just think like legislature, L, letter. What is it? Letters are legislature, okay? Numbers are citizens initiative. If it's a proposition, it just changes a law. Those can be changed in the future pretty easily, by the legislature. If it changes an amendment, it goes into or modifies our Constitution, which is a lot harder to change in the future. Okay? So first, I'm going to go through each of these ballot issues. I ordered them in the order of the ballot. Everyone has their ballots. It goes exactly down the same order. So they put all the amendments up first. First one is Amendment G. This is a modification to our homestead exemption. This is basically a property tax break. Back in 2000, we voted and said, let's property tax break to seniors that are 65 and older, and they've been in their home for 10 years. It's a property tax rate for people who are retired, right? Fixed income, lower their property taxes. How it works is they basically get to take off 100,000 of the market value before their market value of their house gets multiplied by the assessment rate in the mills. And it saves them about $550 on average. 6 years later, we said, let's extend that same property tax break to disabled veterans. So they don't have to be 65 and older. If you're a disabled veteran and you own a home, you also get to have that property tax break. But and then a couple years later, we actually extended it to Gold Star spouses. There was a spouse of a military member who lost their lives in the combat. But the definition of disabled is 100% from the Veterans Association rate ranking. There's a bunch of levels of what percent disabled you can be. And like you can be 60% rating, and that's basically, you still can't work. But the definition of this disabled veteran is 100% of the ranking. So we're going to expand the definition of what's disabled veteran. Now would expand that same property tax break to about 3,700 disabled veterans. So yes vote basically extends that same property tax break. No vote just keeps it the same, and then someone who's 60% rating does not qualify. Amendment H is about misconduct hearing for judges. So right now, if a judge does something weird, they're basically reviewed by a bunch of other judges. And the Supreme Court does something. Colorado Supreme Court handles misconduct cases. This one's more about public transparency. And if a judge is doing something weird and misconduct, they would introduce this board that's made up of attorneys and some citizens and some people appointed by the governor. So you'd actually have a different governing board to look at judicial misconduct instead of the judges judging the judges. The yes vote creates that independent board to review judicial misconduct. No vote just keeps the Supreme Court, does the commission. Amendment I is about first degree bail, first degree murder bail. So the history on this one was basically in 2020, we abolished the death penalty. It's a no more capital punishment. When they did that, they changed the definition and the ability of judges to deny bail to someone who's accused of first degree murder. So since this ruling in 2020 that got rid of the death penalty, now judges can't deny bail to someone who's a first degree murder accused of that. This would restore a judge's ability to deny bail to first degree murder suspects. So basically revert it back to what it was before 2020 when we got rid of the death penalty. So a yes vote gives the ability to say, no, you can't get bail. You got to stay remanded for the entirety of the trial. A no vote says you can't deny bail then. Amendment J is the definition of marriage in our state constitution. So the history of this one, in 2006, we added an amendment to our constitution that defined marriage as between one man and one woman in 2006. They got sued right away. Colorado Supreme Court said that's no good. They negated that. U.S. Supreme Court affirmed that ruling. So basically, we've negated that, but it's still in our Constitution. And to get that language out of our Constitution, we have to amend the Constitution with Amendment J. Amendment J is removing that language that marriage is only between one man and one woman. It doesn't really change. It doesn't change anything going on right now. It just gets that language out. Amendment K, this is a very easy one. This is just gives the county clerks an extra week to do all their data and verify the signatures. I call this the bare naked ladies one because 1 week. Did anyone get that 1998 song joke? Thank you. Yeah, that's just 1 week. The county clerks say, hey, everyone's filing this stuff. It takes a long time to verify signatures, to actually certify the ballot. Give us an extra week. They also, part of this is they give you that blue book. That blue book is what they mail you to educate all voters. And it's really thick and boring. That's why people come to hear me talk. Like just translate that crap. That has to go to us 45 days before the election instead of just 15 right now. So we get a little more time to educate ourselves in the blue book. That's pretty non-controversial. Amendment 79, Citizens Initiative one, because it's the number. This basically adds a constitutional right of abortion into our state constitution. Right now, there's laws on the book that we can have abortion here in Colorado. This would add it into our constitution and protect it in the constitution. That's the one major component. The other big thing of this one is there's currently a ban on using tax dollars for abortion services. So people who are on Medicaid can now have abortion on Medicaid. That's tax funding dollars doing this. Or someone who's a teacher or a firefighter who gets their health insurance through local government. They cannot perform abortion services because their health insurance is through tax dollars. That's in our Constitution. A yes vote on this one takes that out. And people on Medicaid or teachers who get their health insurance through the state would have access to abortion services. This is another one. I think this is a reaction to the Roe v. Wade being struck down and anticipating something drastic changing at the federal level in the future. They're going to strengthen access to abortion here in our Colorado Constitution. Yes vote puts it into our Constitution, protects it in our Constitution, and then gets rid of that ban on tax dollars for abortion services. No vote keeps the same. Not going to change the law on abortion, but it would continue the ban on public funding for teachers and firefighters and Medicaid recipients. Wouldn't be able to get those services on their health insurance, health plan. Amendment 80, this is school choice, very simply written, but it would add school choice into our state constitution. School choice is if you're in school district, you can decide which school to go to. You can apply to different schools around Denver, or even across districts if you want to, or go to a charter school, or go to private school. You already have school choice. We've had school choice for 30 years as a law. This would add it into our Constitution. But the extra work of this one is it defines school choice as public, private, and homeschool. And so a lot of the public school people are against this because it butts heads with another thing in our Constitution. Just like our Constitution says you can't use tax dollars to pay for abortion, our Constitution also says you can't use tax dollars to go to private schools. So this would butt heads with that. Some people are saying that this is the first step toward like a voucher system or dollars going to private schools. So a lot of public school people don't like this one because they're looking at the budget and saying, hey, if you got to give money to 90,000 private school kids, where are you going to get the money from the state budget? It might come from our budgets. So most public school people, I think, are against this one. But that would be down the road. It would basically set up a legal fight of two conflicting things in our Constitution. So yes vote adds school choice into the Constitution, but also defines school choices as private. That's the big thing, big controversy on this one. No vote, there's still school choice. It's not in our Constitution. And those are the amendments. Now the laws. So the propositions. So the history on this one, we legalized sports betting. If anyone bets on the MGM Sportsbook on the Broncos on your phone, we legalized that. Tabor required us to ask permission to tax that. Okay, so we gave permission of Tabor to tax sports betting back in 2019. But as they wrote it, we said we'd only collect 29 million. And we're projected to exceed 29 million in the next several years. But we only gave permission to Tabor to collect 29 million. To keep that extra money above the 29 million, we have to vote again to keep all the money we collect at those same rates. These are just part of the election provisions of Tabor. So basically, we already have sports betting. A no vote means we can only collect 29 million from sports betting, and we'd have to somehow refund some million or two back to casinos or something. A yes vote would allow us to keep all the money we collect from sports betting. This is another technically Tabor-related one because it's a tax increase. You can't raise taxes without going to a vote. Prop KK would put an excise tax on guns and ammo. Excise tax is basically, I always think, of like the manufacturer sells to the store. Different than a sales tax, which you actually see on your receipt. But likely it would just increase the cost for your gun or your ammo. But this would add a 6.5% excise tax on guns and ammo. And then all that money is dedicated to specific services in the bill. It has to go to mental health. That could be veteran mental health, that could be behavioral health, that could be bullying, that could be school kids' mental health. The idea is they're getting tax guns, help fund behavioral health, mental health in Colorado. So that all that $39 million would be earmarked to mental health. So a yes vote raises the tax on guns and ammo, collects about $40 million to mental health. A no vote just keeps the taxes where they are. No extra money for mental health. So Trump's talking about eating cats and dogs in Ohio. We're voting on cats and dogs here in Colorado. Here's the cats one. This would prohibit big bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. So right now, you can apply for a license or a permit to get a permit to hunt a mountain lion. This would prohibit that. No cat hunting if this passes. Proposition 127. How many mountain lions are killed every year in Colorado by hunters? I don't know. What did you say? Did you read that? Did you read ahead? About 500. How many elk are killed every year? Elk. Elk's a big. About 50,000 elk are killed. So basically, we kill about 1% of mountain lions compared to the 50,000 elk that we kill. I looked these numbers up earlier. Bears. How many bears? Black bears. They are shot by hunters every year in Colorado. They're killed. 5,000? About 1,500. I looked at the data. 1,500 were killed last year. 300 of them died in traffic accidents. Who did this bear's driver's license? I don't know. Yeah, but I guess 300 get run over by cars every year. Black bears. We're talking about 1% of the elk population we shoot. As we shoot mountain lions, about 500 mountain lions. This would outlaw that. So a yes vote says no more hunting bobcats, lynx, or mountain lions, big cats. No vote, actually you can't hunt lynx anyway, currently. But this would ban hunters from hunting bobcats. And there's a bunch of exemptions too. Like if you're a farmer and a mountain lion's coming for your kid or your cattle, you can shoot it legally. There's a bunch of exceptions to this, but basically it would ban the hunting of big cats. This is another parole kind of related one, crime related one. Right now, current law says if you're convicted of something and you're in a prison, you have to serve at least 75% of your term before you can go in front of a parole board. You are not eligible to get out on parole until you've served 3/4 of your sentence, 75%. This would up it to 85%. So this would make people stay in jail longer before they're, and only for violent crimes. And it defines violent crimes as basically like aggravated assault and a bunch of felonies. It's listed in the bill. Basically says if you're convicted of a violent crime, you got to now serve at least 85% of your sentence before you're eligible for parole. So it's a tough, harder on crime type of vote. Yes vote says you got to stay in jail longer before parole is eligible. No vote just keeps it at 75%. This one is the dogs one. We talked about the cats, now we're talking about dogs. This is the most controversial, and I get the most questions on this one, and I fake all of them. But this would establish a new professional license for basically right now, there's vet techs, and there's full-on veterinarians that have to get like their doctorate degree, or their medical license. So the big gap between a vet tech and an actual veterinarian. This would establish a new professional level career path that would at least require a master's. And then it's up to a board to make sure what they can do. They would basically, I think of it like a physician's assistant, where they're not a full doctor, but they operate underneath a doctor. But they can still do a lot of the things a doctor can do. This would add that, but for veterinarians. The push for this one is a lot of rural communities don't have any vets. It's super expensive to go to medical school to get all the way to the vet certification. This would add like an intermediary path, but also add like a little higher step for like vet techs that don't want to go to medical school, they go all the way to years and years to get a veterinary license to get a level up. And I know the full vets don't like it because they're kind of protected with their own licensing and stuff. Rural Colorado really likes it because they think it's going to get more professionals doing veterinary services into rural Colorado. And this one, another law enforcement funding one. This one says, the idea of this one is help local law enforcement with recruitment. So right now, all our police are basically local. They're locally funded. We don't really take any state dollars and go to like Denver police or Aurora police or your sheriff. Those are all like property taxes or sales taxes from a local city or local county. Those are all locally funded. This would take $350 million from that general fund, our state budget, and give it out to locals, to local police departments, with the idea of helping recruitment, retainment, and training. Would also add a $1 million benefit to families who lost their family member in the line of duty. If your spouse gets shot or gets killed, unfortunately, as a policeman, you would receive a $1 million death benefit. But understand what this takes away. This takes away money from the state budget, that budget, Medicaid budget, higher education budget. And it's not $350 million a year. It's just there's no time frame on it. Just $350 million state legislators would have to find in the state budget to transfer to your local cops. So yes, vote. You've got to find $350 million in the state budget to give it to local law enforcement. A no vote just keeps everything the same. Basically, the only money we pay from our state budget, that general fund pie I showed you, it pays for highway cops, pull you over if you're speeding, and we have a Colorado Bureau of Investigation. So a little bit of our state money goes to enforcement, but it's basically highway cops. Proposition 131, this is a really complicated one. This is ranked choice voting and open primaries. There's basically two components of this one. So right now, in a primary, the Republicans have their own primary. All Republicans can vote in that primary. And the Democrats have a primary. They can figure out what candidate they want to run in their Democratic primary. And independents can either pick which side to go. We changed that recently, but they can only pick one side. This would open up primaries to everybody. Okay, so there wouldn't be a Republican primary and a Democratic primary. There would just be one open primary, and they take the top 4 vote getters. So you could have a situation where you have 3 Democrats and 1 Marxist, or 3 Republicans and 1 Wicca, or 4 Wiccan. Wicca? Wicca is related to Wiccan. And Wicker is like the baskets. That's a Halloween. That's pretty good Halloween. Nice. So open primary or jungle primary. Sometimes we hear a jungle primary. Different than how we do it now. So that's the first component. Open primary, 1 vote. You get 4 different people, 4 different parties, whatever. Then in the general election, certain offices would do ranked choice voting. The ranked choice voting basically looks like something like this on the left, where instead of filling out 1 bubble, you fill out your top vote, and then your second choice, and your third choice. You're going to fill out a lot more bubbles in ranked choice voting. So it's actually sponsored by the blue and black pen companies. So once you do the ranked choice voting, then it's different. Instead of the top vote getter winning, you have to get at least 50% to win. Let me show you what that would look like. Say we're voting on funniest economic professor at DU. Okay, so let's say there's 3 of us up there, and we're voting on funniest professor. Okay, Dr. Piavani got 43%. I got 40%. So Dr. Booz got 17%. He's on Zoom, isn't he? Yeah. So the current way we vote, Dr. Piavani would win because she's a top vote getter. But in ranked choice voting, no one got 50%. So what we do is we cross out Yabuz, and anyone who voted for Yabuz, we now look at their ballot and look at their second choice. So then basically the second round is now down to 2 candidates. And so you figure out who voted for Yabuz as their first pick between their second picks, and then I won. Yeah. I would get 50% of the vote. So the top vote getter wouldn't necessarily win until they get 50%. And you keep on doing that. If there was 4 candidates, there'd be extra rounds. You'd eliminate the bottom vote getter, and you look at their second vote. And then you eliminate the next bottom, and then maybe look at their third vote. That's how ranked choice voting. Alaska does it, Maine does it, some cities in California, Portland, Oregon, I think does it. And it only impacts certain offices. There would be no ranked choice voting for president. So it gets complicated. It would change our all-candidate primary to an all-candidate primary, or open jungle primary, as some people call it. And it would add ranked choice voting during the general election. A lot of people like the ranked choice voting. A lot of people don't like I've heard people go back and forth. They like the idea of ranked choice voting because the third party Right now, when you vote third party, when you vote for your booze, you're throwing your vote away. And ranked choice voting, you're not throwing your vote away. Because once, Jill Stein's eliminated in ranked choice voting, who's always the third party candidate on the president, those 2% of people are throwing their vote away because they're just never going to win the presidency. But under ranked choice voting, you at least have a say. You can still vote Green Party and feel like you're not throwing your vote away, and then your second choices count. So a lot of people think that's kind of cool. A lot of people are really weary on how open primaries would work, whether more money and would just be, the wealthiest candidate has the most money would get more likely to be on the ticket or not. But it's being marketed as, the commercials are, more open, more fair for third party candidates. Okay, last one, those are the state measures. There's one other one I want to throw in, that's the RTD measure. The RTD is our light rail and our bus system. It's the 8-county district around Denver. So anyone who lives in the RTD or the 8-county, the primary funding source for our light rail is actually sales tax. When you buy your hula hoops or your Tickle Elmo dolls, you pay sales tax on those. And about 1% of that sales tax funds the RTD. They get about $650 million. Okay. In 1999, they wanted to take on a bunch of debt to build a couple of new lines on the light rail. And we had to go to a vote for Tabor. And when we voted to say take on debt, we basically said let's de-Taborize for 25 years. So remember that cap and those bars? If we collect too much bars above the cap, it has to be returned to us. We do that at the state, we do it at every local level as well. We basically, for 25 years, just got rid of the cap and the bars. We didn't need to worry about it. But November 2024 is 25 years later. And so this would basically re-Taborize the RTD. So all the taxes and it collects in sales tax and other sources would be part of the bar, and their cap would grow by a measure of inflation plus new construction. They have a little different formula. But basically recap them, and then they'd have to keep track of their revenue. As they collect too much of the revenue, we'd have to return it somehow. In the early 90s, they were taborized, and they had to return some of the money. They actually did it through people's electric bills. They partnered up with Xcel Energy and actually reduced people's electric bills for like a month as a way to refund money. Likely, if we had to refund money, I bet they would just give free fares for a certain amount of weeks as a way to return money to taxpayers. So a yes vote on AA says you can retain all the money. All the money the RTD collects, doesn't have to worry about its Tabor cap and refunding a little bit of money. It can keep it in forever, perpetuity. I think that's the word. Does that sound smart? Perpetuity? Forever. Okay. It's hard to say how much this would cost or save because you have to project how much revenue the RTD is going to collect in the future and what their cap looks like. One projection has us returning about $2 million in 2027. So maybe we give free fares for a couple of weeks. But a yes vote says de-Taborize them, let RTD collect all the revenue, not have to refund anything because of Tabor. I'll also shout out to my coworker who runs this group of nonprofits to educate voters called CountMeInColorado.org. If you want, like these slides are made by Count Me In. Because we do like a pro and a con. We try not to be biased in anything. We want to give both sides. Three of my colleagues are out in Montrose and Grand Junction this week, giving these similar talks. So if you want to get involved, we are having a Halloween ballot bash next week, or you just want some of these slides or more information, that's a good voter resource, CountMeInColorado.org. Cool.